everybody. Thanks so much for coming out to the Museum of Science. I'd like to first thank Susie and Jack Reno for their generosity in creating the Reno Family Foundation Symposium series. They have made it possible for us to highlight cutting-edge research and to bring important figures to the museum like we are doing tonight. Following the formal program, we invite you to go one floor down with us for a reception with light bites and a cash bar, and of course, continuing the conversation. In 1970, when the Controlled Substances Act was passed, cannabis became officially outlawed for any use. Marijuana was labeled a Schedule I drug, along with heroin and LSD, meaning it has a high potential for abuse, and any use, was completely prohibited, including for medical purposes. Being on the Drug Enforcement Agency's list of the most dangerous drugs has made it extremely difficult for researchers in the U.S. to get permission to study cannabis. It's a complex plant with over 100 active chemical compounds called cannabinoids, and each of these cannabinoids just might have a different medical benefit. We're really fortunate that research for medical use is legal and happening in Israel. Tonight, we will first hear from Dedi Meiri, director of the world's leading cannabis lab, who has come from Israel to share the most recent results of his research. Next, Dr. Bonni Goldstein, a physician specializing in cannabis medicine, will talk about treating patients with medical marijuana, patients with cancer, epilepsy, and autism, and she'll talk about her hands-on experience over the last 10 years. Then Kara Miller, the beloved host of Innovation Hub on WGBH Radio, will join Drs. Meiri and Goldstein for a conversation that will further shine a light on the potential of marijuana's powerful compounds. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to these very special guests. First up, Dedi Meiri.
Hi to everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. If I would knew that Lisa will say so high things about me, maybe I will convince my wife to join me. So thank you very much for having me here. I think it's extremely important event. We are used to live in our bubbles and conferences that people that are dealing with these problems and with this plant, and to open it to new audience, especially here in Boston. It's, for me as a scientist, Harvard, MIT, Broad Institute, it's like the core of the world for science. And to open it here, it's for me a big honor to be here and to speak. So a few words about myself. I'm a scientist, I'm not a physician. I did my degrees in biology, everything in Tel Aviv University. I did biology as a bachelor, and then biochemistry as a master's, and then I have a PhD in molecular and plant biology. And then I moved to Toronto to do a postdoc in cancer research, where I did 4 years working in Princess Margaret Hospital, which is a hospital for cancer patients. And I did 4 years of cancer research. When I came back to Israel, I opened my own lab in the Technion, which is the Technology Institute of Israel. It's very similar to the MIT here. It's a technology institute. We don't have literature. It's very high and important university. As my wife said, they didn't mistake and took you. As you understand, she's very supportive. So I opened my own lab, and I was focusing in how cancer cells started to migrate, to move. You can see here cancer cells moving on a plate. And usually cells in our body don't have the ability to move. Skin cells, liver cells, pancreatic cells, when they are initiate, when they proliferate, they will stuck there. But cancer cells, cancer is a given name to hundreds of different diseases. but we put them in a box. We said we called it the 6 hallmarks. Every time that we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we called it a cancer. And one of the last things that happened, these cells getting the ability to move, to crawl, and then they can create metastasis. So my focus was how these cells that didn't know how to move, getting this ability to start to crawl. But one of my major problems was with myself, as my wife said, that I didn't felt an expert for cancer. I did 4 years cancer research in there, but before that I did biochemistry, and before that I did plant molecular biology. So my supervisor for my PhD said that an expert is somebody that know everything about nothing. And I knew, bits and pieces from here and there. So always in the beginning, I tried to see how I can bring back plants to my research in order to have some kind of benefits of my friends or my colleagues. So after like a year that I was starting to work, there was a publication by a Japanese group that showed that if you put cannabis on breast cancer, it's blocking the ability to crawl, to move. And the reason I saw this publication, because we have Google Scholar, this telling you that somebody quote your work. So they show that it's blocking, the cannabis is blocking migration in breast cancer by blocking the pathway that I found in my postdoc. And for me, it was perfect. I said, oh, this is amazing. This is plant. Sorry for all the people that came for him from cannabis. I didn't care that it's cannabis, it's a plant. And it's blocking the pathway that I found. It's like, was the perfect match for me. So a little bit about cannabis. Cannabis, it's a plant. And there is hundreds of different types of cannabis. In my lab only I have over than 650 different types of cannabis. And I learned quite fast that it's a known medicine. So it's the ancient plant that people use as a medicine. Till 1937, more than 100 illnesses was treated with cannabis. I was in Portland 2 years ago in a conference, and there is like an old library, and I went to this library and I opened a book, a medical book, medicine book from 1920, and there is a whole chapter of illnesses to treat with cannabis. So it was a known medicine. The Egyptians used it as a medicine. The Indians called it the holy plant because it was used as a medicine. In the Bible, 7 times in the Bible, it's called Canna-Bosem. Sorry about my Hebrew. That is perfect. So this is a known medicine. So I was quite excited, and I want to start. Oh, I didn't finish to speak about cannabis. Okay, so cannabis look like that usually, but actually we are not using the leaves, we're using the flowers. On the flowers there are small hairs, we call them trichomes. In the base of the trichomes there is specific cells that create specific compound. This compound called cannabinoids. And these compounds are, this plant can produce over than 100 cannabinoids. I'm familiar with over than 140. Actually, the accurate number is 144 different cannabinoids. And every one of them can affect our body. And the reason these cannabinoids can affect our body so powerfully, it's because cannabis is a very unique plant that create cannabinoids. There is just 7 plants that can create cannabinoids, but it's the only plant that create these amounts of cannabinoids and this variety of cannabinoids. And this make him very unique. But our body, this is plant, in animals, actually except insects, all animals can create cannabinoids. We have in our body a system called the endocannabinoid system. Our body creates cannabinoids, and they are like messengers that deliver messages between different cells to tell them to do things. And this machinery, this system in our body, is an extremely important system that is balancing our body. It's like homeostatic system that balance many things. I can give few samples. One of the samples that I'm always giving because I like it is how we feel appetite, how we feel to feel hungry. There is two ways to feel hungry. One is coming from our belly, and one is coming from our head. So if we are not eating for 2 days, our intestine is shrinking and it's signaling up that we need to eat. But how many times we finish a huge meal and then come the dessert? We are not hungry anymore, right? And we're still eating it. So the reason it's because it's come from here. And this is the endocannabinoid system that's signaling. Think about the hunter that's running after a deer for 2 days. He succeeds to hunt it, he put it on the fire, he's cooking it, and after a few bites, he's totally full. But the endocannabinoid system is signaling to keep eating because it's important to keep eating for this hunter. For us, most of us suffer it from these days. We wish to block it. But it was very important system to balance the appetite and to increase it. And it's true for the immune system when we have an infection or we have the immune system in hyperactivity. The way to balance it down, one of the ways that our body is doing it, it's with this endocannabinoid system. So this endocannabinoid system is very important to how we feel pain, how we sleep, how we eat, how the immune system is working, in our memory. Many systems, it's balancing and giving homeostatic. And the plant, the cannabis plant, is mimic this. The cannabinoids from the cannabinoids from the plant is just doing a bypass. Instead of the body to create this cannabinoid, they will bind the receptors on the cells and send signaling. So if the endocannabinoid system is responsible to create appetite, it's not surprising that smoking cannabis is increasing appetite. All the stoners know they called it munchies, right? So you smoke and you can eat the fridge without opening it, right? But this is because it's just doing a bypass, binding the receptors on the neurons and creating this appetite. And it's true for pain, it's true for many things. So coming back to my lab, when I want to do a research on cannabis and cancer, I want to ask if cannabis can use as an anti-cancer drug, if it can block the cells to migrate, if it can block the proliferation, the cells to divide, if maybe it can kill the cancer cells. So how we are doing it? We are growing the cells in a plate. This is one of my students, Liran, growing cells in the lab. And we're growing cells, we're taking cancer cells and we're growing them in the plate. Okay, this is actually how the plate look like. Cells in the plate look like that. This is one cell. I marked it for you here. You see it? And in the middle of the cells, you can see the nucleus. It's more condensed, so it's more black. This is a light microscopy. So these are cells growing in a plate. You see here something like 100 cells, but actually in a plate like that, we have between 3 million to 10 million cells, and depend of the types of the cells, they will be different. So we can grow the cells in the plate, and then we can take the cannabis to extract the active compounds and put them on the cells and to see how that affects them. So as I told you, I have many types of cannabis in my lab. And in the beginning, I came to one of my first students, I told her, Liran, let's take 10 types of cancer that I brought with me from Toronto, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, liver cancer, and let's take 10 different types of cannabis and see how it's affecting the cells. So we did it, and we took colon cancer. This is a lower magnification, so every dot here, it's a cell. So we took a colon cancer cells, and we took the cannabis, we extract the active compound, and we put on the cells, and surprisingly, we saw that all the cells died. We took plant number 2, different types of cannabis we put, and all the cells died. But when we took cannabis type number 3,
it didn't affect the cells at all. And then we took a breast cancer and we saw a very similar phenomena. But when we took prostate cancer, the first cannabis, the first strain, the extract that we took that killed the colon cancer and the breast cancer didn't affect the prostate cancer at all. The same with the second one. But the third one that didn't affect the colon cancer, didn't affect the breast cancer, killed the prostate cancer. So we saw a specificity between the types of the cannabis and its ability to affect the cancer cells. When we took a normal colon cells, not a cancer cells, we saw that it's not affecting them. So for me as a scientist, you need to understand, I'm not a physician, I'm not treating patient. I'm looking for how this affecting the cells. What is the mechanism? What is changing in the cells? And when I saw this, it was very exciting for me. Because as a scientist, I'm looking for two things that are very similar, but something small is different and there is a different then I can catch it. And I was quite excited about this result. But the most important result here is the amount that we need to put on the cells. So if you're taking, there is something we call IC50s. What is the amount that you need to put on the cells in order to kill 50% of them? And every material in the world, in the end, will kill the cells. You put sugar, you put salt, whatever. Okay, but the question, is it in what we called a window, how we called it, Bonni? Therapeutic window. Okay, I forgot the termination in English. Therapeutic window. So I took with my nephew rosemary, he needed to do something for his high school, and he came to my lab. We took rosemary and lemongrass, and we did extraction from the rosemary, and we put on these cells, on these colon cells. In order to kill these cells with rosemary, we had to put 50 milligram per kilogram per gram, sorry, for ml on these cells. Doesn't matter the numbers. But the point, if you're doing this extrapolation, how much a person needs to take rosemary per day, he needs to take 60 kilos a day, which is not a therapeutic window. But if I'm doing the same thing with cannabis, I need 60,000 times less. I need 1 gram a day. And I have few friends from college that using much more than 1 gram a day, and they are fine, okay? So we know that it's under therapeutic therapeutic window. An average patient in Israel we have 40,000 patients that getting cannabis under a physician prescription. The average per month is 34.5 grams. So it's more than 1 gram a day. So this was extremely excited. We asked what is doing this effect? What is the difference between extract number 2 and extract number 3? And I went and asked it a little bit, and people told me about the cannabinoids that are in the plant. But everybody is talking usually on 2 major cannabinoids. One is THC, because this is the major cannabinoids that cause the psychoactive effect, causing to feel high. And the second one is CBD, that is very famous. It reduces seizures, and also it's very high in the plant. So these are the 2 major cannabinoids. But when I checked extract number 2 and extract number 3, they look totally the same by THC and CBD. But as I told you already, there are hundreds. So this is saying that these are the 2 major cannabinoids. But as I told you, there is not just 2 cannabinoids in the plant. There are over than 100. And when I started to learn a little bit more, I learned that there are also other compounds, active compounds in my extract. There are terpenes and flavonoids. Altogether, over than 600 active compounds. So I'm looking just on 2. This is the tip of the iceberg. Who said that these 2 are important? Who said that these 2 are the ones that are affecting my cells? I can tell you for sure they are not. So for half a year, I hit my head to the wall. I went to Colorado, to Los Angeles, to Toronto. I spoke with physicians. I spoke with people. I'm talking about 3 years ago. It was cannabis. It's like a dog years. Every year is like 7. So we're talking about 21 years ago. So nobody even understood what I want from them. What do you mean other compounds? What do you mean other cannabinoids? So after half a year, I realized that I'm in the nerd university. I'm in the Technion, right? It's the MIT. They just by mistake took me. So I went to one of these genius, Tomer Shlomi, and together we developed a method to read all these active compounds. Today we are not blind anymore. We can see all the active compounds in cannabis, all these 600s. I can read 144 cannabinoids. I can read over than 120 terpenes. I can read more than 40 flavonoids and more. So this is from a paper that was published last week after a year of struggling. And these are 20 different strains that I picked from Israel, 20 different cannabinoids plants. And these are the active compounds, the cannabinoid. This is the THC, one of the famous one. This is the CBD, but you can see that there are other. And we called it a heat map. When it's black, the meaning that this cannabinoid is highly expressed here. When it's white, the meaning that it's not expressing here. What I want to show you is how much they are different from each other, how much they don't look like. And for me, if a patient is taking this one or taking that one, it's a totally different medicine. Different compounds will enter his body and different compounds will affect him. And since I have just 20 minutes, I will run fast to my results and I skip that. So how we are dealing with that? We can grow the cells in plate like that, but we could also grow them in the cells that have many wells, many holes. So I can take a pancreatic cancer, grow it in a plate like that have 96 wells, and use 96 different types of cannabis inside. And I have this machine in my lab called high throughput screening machine that can take images from each well as much as I want, can take up to 1,000 images an hour. So if you put these cells in this machine, it can take 24,000 images in a day, and you get good sense of how every treatment that you did is affecting the cells. But cancer, as I said, it's a given name to 100 of different diseases, but also in the same types of cancer. If we're talking about breast cancer or prostate cancer, we have subtypes of this cancer, and we have different mutation. So this graph is every two like that, it's the same types of cancer. This is melanoma, this is colon cancer, this is prostate cancer. So if we look on this, this is colon cancer. This is what is the percentage of the cells that died. And every color, it's a different extract. It doesn't matter the graph. What I want to show that in these types of colon cancer, there was few types of cannabis that was very effective. On this type of colon cancer, none of the extracts that we tried, and I tried over than 600 different types of cannabis, none of them affect. So even if I will learn that this cannabis is good for this prostate cancer, is not good for all types of cancer. So how we can deal with it? What we can do, we can look on very, very specific, what we call today personal medicine. We look on breast cancer with a specific mutation, BRCA1 mutation. Even in the BRC, there is two types of mutation, and we look on very, very specific, very narrow. And when I'm looking on that, I'm taking cannabis and I'm screening in this my method, okay? And now we look on cell viability. So if the bar is low, the meaning that more cells die. And these are 4 different types of cells. The blue one is breast cells without mutation, and we not go deeper to the reason, to the types of the mutation. I will just say that this color, this is a gradient of how aggressive this cancer. So the blue one is without mutation, the yellow one is very aggressive, okay? So I'm starting to screen, and you see this cannabis didn't affect at all, this until I find one type of cannabis that align with the aggressiveness of this mutation. Align with this mutation. When I find it, I'm doing everything that a scientist needs to do. I'm checking it again, and I'm checking with the different types of cells that have the same mutation, and I'm doing a rescue to this mutation with a normal protein. Believe me, I'm doing everything to prove that what I see here is true. And when I have it, this will be a PhD or a postdoc of a student. I will put a student on that. And then we're taking it to mice model. And we will cause this mutation to the mice, and we will treat them. And you see here tumors from a mice that won't be treated, and tumors from the mice that was treated for 3 weeks. How it shrink these tumors, okay? So from one hand, I'm trying to understand how it affects the cancer cell, but the other hand is asking which compounds are important. I'm having an extract that have now 200 compounds. How can I repeat it? How can I give it to a patient and know that he's getting the right thing? How can I dose it? It's very complicated with it's so many compounds. So I'm asking myself, my slogan to my student, it doesn't matter if we're talking about cancer, epilepsy, or Alzheimer. My slogan to my students, I want the minimum compound that's doing the maximum effect. It can be 1, 5, 13, I don't know. So what are we doing? We're taking this extract that have all this compound, and we run in our machine, and we dissect it, we fractionate it. If there is 100 compound, we will separate it 25 compounds in the first tube, 25 other compounds in the second tube, third tube, fourth tube. We just fractionate it. And we're coming back to the cells after the fractionation, and we're putting these fractions on the cells or on the mice, or giving to the mice. And we see how it's affecting. The red one is the curve of how the whole extract affects the cells. As it's lower, the meaning it's kill more cells. And these are the fractions. You see, we find that just one fraction is doing this effect. So I eliminate 75% of these compounds. I don't need them. I stayed with just 25. And I'm taking these 25, and now I'm fractioning them again. 5, 5, 5, and 5. And I'm coming back to the cells until I'm finding the right compounds. And in these types of cancer, we find that we need 3 compounds in order to kill the cells when they have this specific mutation. One of these cannabinoids don't even have a name, 33118B. You can understand that it's done in the Technion, right? These names. If it was in Tel Aviv University, it's called the C one, or the sun sign, something like that. But this is the Technion. So these compounds don't even have a name, right? But without it, if I'm taking these 3 compounds, putting this on the cells, it's exactly as good as the whole extract. But if I'm taking one compound out, it's not working anymore. So I succeed to narrow it down to 3 compounds that are important to this action. And when I know it, now I know what to keep in this extract, what the grower need to grow, what he need to keep, what we need to check before we give it to the patient. Now I can dose it, I can check it in the blood, I can do whatever I need to do as a medicine. So this is one way to go. So when my lab had this ability to analyze all these active compounds in the cannabis, it totally changed the lab. Because every physician, every clinical trial, every startup, everyone approached us and said, hey, we just understand that we don't know what we are giving to the patient, that we are doing clinical trials on 1,500 pain patients, but actually you just taught me that they are getting 70 different medicines. So everybody approached us, and I found myself standing there and picking different projects that looked to me very interesting. My lab grew very much from 5 students. I have a 45 students lab today, which deal with many, many aspects. Still, the cancer is the major thing, but we're doing epilepsy research, Alzheimer, sleep disorder, autoimmune disease, and other things. In every one of them, we have a mice model, cell models, and clinical trials. What I want to show you, it's another approach that we are taking in order to understand where to start even this research. And this is database. I understood 2.5 years ago that I have the ability to know from bottom to top what the patient is getting. As I told you, in Israel, we have 40,000 patients that getting cannabis for many types of indication, for epilepsy, Alzheimer, sleep disorder, pain, cancer, to increase appetite, reduce nausea. So these patients getting cannabis under prescription, so I can do follow-up. So I said to her, this is very complicated, because in Israel, the patient getting 98 different strains, so actually like 98 different medicines. Each one of them have many compounds. And they are getting it to many different types of illnesses, actually 12 different indications. So I said, okay, we called it a big data mining. And what we suggest, and we're doing in the last 3 years, one arm, we're doing a follow-up on every cannabis that a patient can get in Israel. All these 98 different strains that the patient get, every time that a grower picked a batch, it's coming to my lab as a sample, and we're doing full identification of all the active compounds. On the other hand, we're doing follow-up on the patient and trying to align this. In the next 4 minutes that I have, I want to tell you about a small study from this database that was on autistic kids. 2 years ago, 2 and a bit, the Minister of Health called me and another 3 physicians. Israel is so small, the Minister of Health calling you, you hear it. So I came there, and we were sitting in a meeting, and there was the discussion if to start to give to autistic kids cannabis. And the case was, we're talking about very, very severe autistic kids, kids that don't communicate at all, very violent. Most of them are hospitalized by force because they are so violent. And the idea was that there was 3 kids that started to get cannabis because they also had seizures, as epileptic-like seizures. And the families came back and said that it's totally improved many parameters of these autistic kids. So the discussion was if to start to give the kids, and we started to give them cannabis. So the Minister of Health said, I will allow to give to these kids in 2 rules. I don't want to see kids smoking, and I don't want to see kids stoned. So in Israel, the kids are getting cannabis with oil, and they're getting cannabis without THC, very low amount of THC, so they are not stoned. It's high CBD strains. And we started to follow up on these kids, and this is a research that we are just publishing on these kids, and the result was phenomenal. I must say that, first of all, I was the only one that was against it in this meeting. I said, these kids, I don't understand how their brain is working, and to give them cannabis sounds to me crazy, but I'm very happy to be wrong here. So we follow up on these kids, and the result was just amazing. We have around 80% success on reducing aggressiveness of these kids. These kids are not stoned, they are not high, right? But they are much more aggressive on themselves, on the surrounding. Half of the kids that was hospitalized after 2 months was released home because the hospital said, we don't need to keep them here anymore, they are not aggressive anymore. Really, really amazing result. All these kids were like taking 1 step up in the stairs. If they never had eye contact, they started to have eye contact. If they had eye contact and never speak, they started to say a few words. They were much concentrated. They slept much better. The average of these kids to wake up in the night was 7.2. 7 times a night they were waking up. Think about 16 years old, it's still 7 times a night waking up. I don't know how many of you have kids. I have 4. 7 nights, it's a lot. 7 times a night, it's a lot. Okay? This average reduced to 1.8. So most of them sleeping a whole night. This totally changed this family's life. But what we found out, that there is a big change between males and females. It was working very well on males, but not on females. Repetitive movement, 48% improvement in males, just 9 in female. Eye contact, 47% improvement in males, 0 in female. Response to name, 50% improvement in male, 0 in female. Really, really surprising. But when we look on the strains, we saw a huge difference between the strains that the kids took. There are these strains that all the kids that took it improve most of the parameters that we checked. We checked 32 different parameters. And you see this, every bar here, it's a different strain. So blue is improvement, green is no change, and red, it's make it worse. And you can see that there are strains that was very, very good, and there are strains that was much worse. And when we gave these kids a pure CBD, it didn't work at all. So even though it's the major cannabinoids in these strains, if you give just CBD, it didn't work. So the story that I want to tell you started a few months ago. When we started, Israel is, a small community, and all these parents have WhatsApp between them, and everyone is telling that this strain is working the best. And also I'm standing and presenting this data, and the parents hear about these strains, and all the kids is starting to move and to take these strains. The company that produced this strain, the lucky one, the best one, after 1 month ran out. They didn't, it's a plant. They grew a bunch of it, and it ran out. So they need a cannabis, it takes 3 months to grow it again. So they need another 2 months until they have a new crop. So they said, okay, these strains, we know it's high CBD, low THC, we will give a similar strain that we have to these kids, and they change it to this strain. On the bottle, they don't need to change anything. It's called high CBD. It's the same company, the bottle is the same, the families don't even know that they changed the strain. But in that moment, in the same day, we started to get phone calls. We started to get people coming to the lab. It was a crisis. These kids, after 24 hours getting these strains, become very violent again. Everything they got back from the initial place, and even much worse. One of the parents told me that in order to control his son, he had to break his both arms. One of the kids jumped on his mother and beat her so strong that she had to go to medical care. One kid got out of the window, cut himself all over. We're talking about over 60 calls in 2 days of getting worse and worse. But we're in that position, saying just a moment, in 4 hours we got a sample of the other strain, and we understood that even the CBD and the THC are the same. There are many other cannabinoids that are different. And we were able to screen all the strains in Israel that have high CBD and low THC, and to tell the parents which company have a very similar strain to this one. And again, after 24 hours, these kids become less violent again, more communicative, sleep well, which for me, it's like a control experiment. This kid didn't know that we changed the cannabis for them. And it's everything, all the parameters got worse. And when we change it back to something similar, it's helped them. And for me, this is the science behind it. I was very skeptical 3 years ago when I started to work with cannabis. It was a gimmick for me, nothing more. I never used cannabis. I didn't like it. When my friends got stoned, I thought I will have a good publication as a scientist, not more than this. What I learned in the last 3 years, that this plant has a huge potential for curing many, many illnesses. And we're just starting to scratch the beginning of understanding this complicated plant. This is my team. I want to say thank you for a few of them. This is Shirley Berman, Dr. Shirley Berman, that analyzed all the cannabinoids. This is Dr. Yigal Luria, which are head of the hematology in my lab, all the immune system. This is Dr. Gil Levitus that doing all the epilepsy and Alzheimer, all the neuro research. And this is Dr. Liran Berman that did all the cancer work. She's the head of the group. And this is amazing group that doing all this work. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. My name's Bonni Goldstein. Dedi is a hard act to follow, so I hope I can engage you the same way he does. He does some amazing work. I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I am a cannabis physician in Los Angeles, California. I trained as a pediatric emergency medicine doctor, which I did for 13 years. Found myself extraordinarily burned out trying to work at night and be a mom during the day. I took some time off, and I had a friend who was ill at the time who asked me about cannabis, and like most physicians, I knew nothing, completely uninformed, but I decided to do some research for my friend, and I could not believe what I was reading. This was back in about 2006, 2007. In 2008, I went back into medicine after taking some time off because I missed it, but also I was intrigued by cannabis medicine after witnessing my friend have tremendous improvement in the quality of her life without, she was not a pothead, she was not a stoner, she was not a person who was doing this because of recreational reasons. She was very sick, and she was losing the battle, and it turned out to be the best decision she ever made. And I thought, wow, this is some very interesting science that I didn't learn in medical school, and I was just curious, and it intrigued me. And I got a job working in a medical marijuana practice in Long Beach. And I will tell you that my patients, every single one of them, knew more than I did. I learned from them, and I've thrown myself into it. Now I've been doing this 10 years. I run a medical practice called Canna-Centers Wellness and Education. We have a large office in Los Angeles. However, I was seeing a lot of adults. I still have my adult patients that I take care of, but I'm now focusing on children because of the benefits, as you've heard, with epilepsy, autism, cancer, and a lot of other conditions. And my background is in pediatrics, and that's where my passion is. I published a book a couple years ago called Cannabis Revealed because one of my sick patients said, you know, every time I come here, I learn so much, but like, where can I learn this? And I realized there really wasn't a physician's perspective where you look at the science and combine it with the clinical experience. And so that's why I put the book out. Of course, this industry, this science is changing all the time. It has to be revised. But it's a good primer if you're interested. This is why cannabis, right here. These are my patients. These are all children who have very serious illness. Both of these little girls up here I'm going to talk about. Both of them are cancer survivors. This is a little girl who's fighting cancer since she's an infant, and she's been on cannabis since infancy, and now she's going to be, I think, 7 this month. And then all of these other kids are kids with multiple complex medical conditions. This young man right here is a major success story. He was going to have brain surgery to have a piece of his brain taken out that was causing his epilepsy, but his mom decided to try cannabis, and he's been seizure-free. He was able to avoid removal of a piece of his brain. So, but this is exactly why all of these kids are being medically supervised. The beauty of cannabis is believe it or not, don't believe the brainwashing. It's extremely safe. I have yet to harm anybody with cannabis medicine, and I can't say that. I recall a day back in the pediatric emergency medicine, I gave a young girl, 16 years old, she was having a massive migraine. I gave her some medication that just about induced a heart attack. Seriously, we had to check her to see if she was having a heart attack. I thought I had killed somebody. And that was terrifying. And with cannabis, it's just incredibly safe. I think all of us have been brainwashed. I was too. And but you have to remember that it's a plant. It's not going to harm you, especially if it's medically supervised. The rationale behind using cannabis. So, of course, the endocannabinoid system, and Dedi touched on it, and I'm going to mention it as well. It is this physiologic regulatory system that we all have. The mechanism is there, and it just so happens that these compounds in the plant interact with that mechanism. Why wouldn't we use the endocannabinoid system as a target? We also know, I've already mentioned, no organ toxicity, an excellent safety profile. We also know for cancer, and I'm going to focus on cancer in my talk, the synergy with chemo and radiation. There are studies that show that the combination is actually not only one protective, but actually may make the chemo or radiation work better, kill more cancer cells. Cannabis is tolerated well by most. Here and there I come across people who don't tolerate high doses of cannabis. Sometimes with cancer patients, I'm giving them very high doses, but the beauty of cannabis, it is flexible. I do have the issues that Dedi touched on, which is we don't know exactly which strains to use. And in California, we've got hundreds and hundreds of, probably thousands of strains by now, and we don't have the ability to fingerprint them. However, with the way that we've been treating patients with multiple different preparations to try to hit on the proper combination, hoping that we get that, we're giving patients a fair amount of cannabis, and most of them tolerate it really well, especially children. You'd be surprised. Quality of life, I mean, this goes without saying. As doctors, we're supposed to help people. Sometimes we help people transition at the end of life, and there's no reason that they should not have cannabis at the end of life. I have an uncle who had 2 speeds at the end of his life. One was screaming in pain or passed out on the opiates, and he didn't even know his family was there. And it would have been nice for him to have that middle ground where he was comfortable, he wasn't completely out of it, and he was able to have pain relief. And then also now, in most states that are passing cannabis laws, we have quality control, so you're able to test the plant. We're not able to test it the way Dedi's lab does, but we are at least able to know much of the cannabinoids that are in it and also the terpenes that are in it, so we can at least try to help patients find what will work for them. And we're able to maintain consistency. As Dedi mentioned, those kids with autism were taking a strain that seemed to work very well, and then they were switched off of that just because they moved from one high CBD strain to another. Right now, what we're trying to do, especially in California, is to make sure that the companies that are making these products realize this is long-term, possibly for life, medication for these families, and that they need to commit to growing the same strains and making the oils the same way. Here's a picture of the endocannabinoid system. I'm just going to talk real quick about what it is. So we already talked about homeostasis. So these are 2 cells, neurons, talking to each other. NT is neurotransmitter. What happens is your brain releases neurotransmitters, GABA, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine. You've heard of these. And what happens is when they're released, the cell that's receiving them then passes the message on to the next cell in the line. However, if the cell is off, the neurotransmitter message is off, it's sending the wrong message. Usually it's a neuroexcitation, it's too much of a message. What ends up happening is this cell becomes what we call perturbed. It gets annoyed, the calcium rushes in, which tells your body to make your own natural, what I call inner cannabis, your endocannabinoid, the compound that looks just like what's in the cannabis plant, which goes backwards. When I went to medical school, I learned that these cells only talk to each other in one way, and that's not true. There's actually a backwards mechanism that was only just discovered in the late 1980s, early 1990s. But what happens is that the compound here, the endocannabinoid, sticks on, you see a little triangle sticking like a key in a lock, sending the message to turn it down. So for instance, if a brain is firing with seizures or an anxiety attack, or nausea from chemotherapy, what's happening is that the cell is sending a message backwards to say, turn it down, okay? And by targeting this receptor, which is called the cannabinoid receptor, the plant compounds can target that. And so you're kind of doing what we call an override. You're just replacing. There are now studies that clearly show that children with, and this is a study out of Stanford in March of this year, with autism do not make enough of this. Well, if you don't make enough of that, you can never send the message back to say, get back into balance. And we know now from research that illnesses like irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, migraines, anxiety attacks, PTSD, all of these kinds of conditions can all have a root cause of some what we call endocannabinoid deficiency or dysfunction. Dedi showed this, but here's the female flower. I mean, most of us grew up thinking that's called the bud, but that's really the female flower. And then if you look up close, these are the trichomes, these little antenna-like structures, and then it's within these trichomes that the phytocannabinoids are created, and those are basically the factories. And these are just 5 of the many phytocannabinoids that are found. Now, Dedi talked about this and showed you the slides. But what we have found is that cannabis can affect cancer cells directly in 4 ways. And those 4 ways include inhibiting tumor growth, actually telling the cells to stop growing. They can cause cancer cells to commit suicide. The fancy word for that is apoptosis, but it does not harm the healthy cells. And what's happening here often is that when the THC binds to that cannabinoid receptor, which is on the cancer cell, instead of telling the cell to turn it down, what it's telling the cell is to kill itself. So it's actually directly sending a cell suicide message to those cells. Dedi mentioned this, inhibiting metastasis, but also we know that cannabinoids can stop cells from growing their own blood vessels that feed themselves. So remember, once a tumor is the size, they say, of a head of a ballpoint pen, the tumor is starting to grow its own blood vessels to feed itself. And if you can starve that, now there's other plants that do this. We know green tea has chemicals in it that can starve cancer cells. We also know that berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries also have chemicals in it that will starve cancer cells. Well, so does the phytocannabinoids, which will inhibit angiogenesis. And then there's recent research, and really just in the past few years, when I first started seeing cancer patients back in 2008, I really worried that I might be giving them cannabis, which then might make their chemotherapy ineffective. And the last thing I wanted to do was to block somebody's treatment. And now we know that many of the cannabinoids actually are synergistic, meaning they work together to give a better effect with chemo and radiation. And here's just some of the titles, so you'll see the effects of cannabidiol and its synergism with bortezomib in multiple myeloma. Here's one, pharmacologic synergism between cannabinoids and paclitaxel, which is used for gastric cancer and some other other cancers. Here's one called gemcitabine cannabinoid combination triggers autophagy, which is cell death in pancreatic cancer cells. And then remember that in the United States, cancer research using cannabis for anything is actually still prohibited because it is a Schedule I drug. You have to jump through DEA, FDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, multiple hoops to be able to do research. I have a colleague out of Colorado. She finally got approval after 3 years to study cannabis in veterans with severe PTSD. It's costing $2.2 million to do the study because of the amount of manpower needed to run it, and also to make sure that nobody gets a hold of the cannabis, but you know you can get it at the local high school, right? So anyway, in Spain there was a study from 2006, I believe, where they actually directly put THC onto brain tumor cells, but there's this study that came out last year from a it's actually not even a published study, it's just a finding because it was done by a pharmaceutical company. GW Pharmaceutical, you may have heard about them in the news. They just got a CBD, pure CBD, that was just approved for children with severe epilepsy. It was just approved in June. We just got the DEA licensing the other day. It's going to be a Schedule V because it doesn't have an abuse potential. However, all the rest of CBD in the country is illegal. Glioblastoma multiforme, that is a very nasty cancer, if you've heard of that. You probably heard John McCain had this, Joe Biden's son had this. It has dismal prognosis. And there was a study in mice that showed that if you gave temozolomide, which is a chemotherapy, along with cannabinoids, there was synergy. So this company took 21 patients with recurrent GBM, and they were either given the chemo alone, temozolomide, or they were given chemo plus cannabinoid treatment. The patients with the cannabinoids had an 83% one-year survival, and the patients who did not had a 53%. This is significant, and probably we will see that they will probably make some pharmaceutical compound. But where I live in California, you can get medical cannabis, whether you're a patient or now recreationally. So I've been treating patients with cannabinoids for quite some time for cancer because of the science that we have. I treat patients when they come in with cancer. Many of them are at the end of the road, so it's very hard to compare patients that come in. Some have had only one type of chemo, some have had others, and people always ask me, what's your success rate? And it's very hard to sort it all out because it's not a clinical trial that I'm doing. It's just people who have picked at some point during their cancer journey to come into my office. But some patients are only coming in because they want symptomatic relief. And with symptomatic relief, you don't need big doses. Low doses, there's lots of cannabinoids to pick from: CBD, THC, THCA, CBDA, there's CBG, there's something called Delta 8 THC now, there's THCV. We have lots of choices in California for you to be able to pick something that will help with nausea, appetite, anxiety, sleep. Oftentimes, patients mix different cannabinoids for different effects. This is their daytime medicine, and then this is something they take at night so that they can sleep. Some patients take it prior to going into chemo because it will actually prevent the nausea and vomiting for those patients. I also treat patients in very high doses as what we call natural chemotherapy. It is not accepted by most physicians to be a treatment. We don't have clinical trials, so I don't blame doctors for saying, well, why would you do this? Well, because these patients are in my office. Legally, I'm allowed to do it, and we've had some success. If there are benefits, we talk about maintenance doses. My colleagues and I, the other doctors who do this, if we get ahead of a cancer, especially someone with a stage 4, and we are able to contain that cancer or get that patient to get rid of their cancer, we tell them, stay on your cannabis. Don't give it a chance to come back. I recently took care of a little girl who's 3 years old, was sent home on hospice. She was actually sent home to die. She had a mixed leukemia type, but they treated her for one type of leukemia. It came back as the other type. She got a bone marrow transplant. She was only in remission for 3 months when it came back with a vengeance. When she came to me, the parents had decided no more treatment, but they were going to give cannabis a chance. We got her into remission within 10 weeks. After 11 months, the parents, without talking to me, decided to stop the cannabis oil, and she relapsed. Now, I don't know, there was some psychosocial stuff going on in the family. I don't know if it's expensive to do this type of treatment. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But we've got her back on cannabis oil, and she's actually back on chemo. And hopefully the combination will kill this very aggressive type of leukemia that she has. But I tell patients, you kind of have to stay on it. It's not accepted by most physicians. And again, the biggest obstacle is that we have a government that is in the way of our research. People always call me, I want to be involved in your research. I'm not allowed to do research. I'm not allowed to touch this stuff. Dedi lives in Israel, where the government actually is helping them, providing them funds, providing them legality so that Dedi can go pick up cannabis from a dispensary and bring it to his lab and study it. I am not allowed to touch it. I'm not allowed to have it in my office. It's completely different and ridiculous, if you ask me. Methods of delivery. So patients can take cannabis many different ways. They work differently in your body, the different ways you take them. So you can inhale, although I don't recommend smoking, usually vaporization. There's under the tongue. Most pediatric patients either take it under the tongue or ingest it in an oil form that looks like this. There's topical cannabis, like a balm that you can rub on. That's really, I have an uncle who's 92 who had skin cancer, and they wanted to do this crazy flap surgery procedure. And I was like, no, we're going to put cannabis on it, and the skin cancer's gone. So I saved him that procedure, and I just didn't see any reason not to try the non-toxic, less invasive treatment first. There's also, I don't mean to show everybody Oreos, because I don't think actually those are cannabis Oreos, but this is the picture I found. So, but you can get cannabis in candies. They have these thing called, instead of Jolly Ranchers, Wally Ranchers. I mean, there's all these different kinds of things out there. But of course, everything has a label now in California. It was the Wild West for a while, where we didn't have regulations, but now we have them. Everything's labeled. You know what's in it. You know what the cannabinoids are. Dosing for edibles has gone down in terms of how many milligrams are allowed in each package. But the idea is that you have choices. Now, if you're taking large doses, which is usually what I treat if I'm treating cancer specifically, not symptoms, but I'm trying to kill cancer cells, we do not know how much somebody has to take. And you have to remember, if you eat 10 milligrams, that does not mean you absorb 10 milligrams. In fact, absorption is very low. So what we do is we start with low doses and we titrate up to very high doses of these different cannabinoids. And the only way to get those high doses is really to take it under the tongue in a concentrated oil, or to ingest it for young children who can't cooperate with under the tongue. I just wanted to show you the different cannabinoids that are available, and this doesn't even list some of the other ones. I redacted out the name of the company because I didn't want to give them a free advertisement, but you can see that each one of these is labeled by what's in it. So you see it says 10, THC 10, that means 10 milligrams in 1 ml. Here's THC 50, 50 milligrams in 1 ml. So depending on your dose, you're able to get a compound that you can actually measure out how many milligrams you're taking. Here's CBD, THCA, CBDA. This one is it says hybrid 1-to-1, so it's half THC, half CBD. And then here's one that's a CBD 18-to-1. And remember, from all the cannabinoids, there's really only THC is the one that the plant is vilified for the intoxicating effect. I have patients who have been cannabis patients for years and have never been high. So there is no reason for anybody to always jump to that conclusion, oh, you're a cannabis patient, so you're high. That most of them are not. So this is AJ. AJ is a boy I wrote about in my book. He came to me with stage 4 osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer. It was already stage 4 when he finally got diagnosed. It was all over. It was in his leg where the primary tumor was, but it was already spread to his lungs. And usually stage 4 osteosarcoma is a very poor prognosis. It was already in his chest and spine. I think he had had 17 surgeries prior to coming to me. He had 2.5 years of chemotherapy. He was really beat up. This is after. Over 20 tumors in his chest. And the reason actually his family came to me was because he had severe uncontrollable pain. He was on 12 opiates a day without any relief whatsoever. And I'm the mom of, and when he came to see me, my son was 2 years younger than him, and there was no way I was letting this family go down without a fight. So I asked them if they were on board, and they said, we'll do anything to save our child's life. And by the way, his mother works for a big like defense company, and she just kind of sat there like deer in the headlights. She was like, I can't believe I'm in a cannabis doctor's office. What am I doing here? But the dad was like, nope, we're going to do this. And he was on also, just by the way, palliative doses, meaning low dose of gemcitabine, which is one of the compounds I mentioned in the study with synergies. And they didn't want to take the chemo away. The oncologist told me she wanted to stop the chemo and just let him to go home and die, but his parents did not want to stop treatment. Anyway, we started high doses of cannabis oil in April of 2015, and within the first week, his fever stopped, his pain was controlled, he was down to 1 opiate a day, he had gained some weight, and he was smiling. The parents were on board. I gave them a titration schedule, low dose to get to high dose over a period of a couple months. They went faster than any other of my families. And when he had repeat scans this was April 2015, his repeat scans in July of 2015, I got a text message from the mom saying, you need to call me right away, which kind of threw me for a loop for a couple hours because I couldn't call her back. And I called her and she said 4 scans, bone, MRI, CT scan, PET scan, all negative for cancer, over 20 tumors gone. Now, I have to tell you, I wish I knew the combination, what worked for him. Let's package it up, right? And give it to everybody with that type of cancer, that type of mutation, as Dedi talks about. But, this is, and by the way, this is him that Halloween, which he was not supposed to be around for, so that was very rewarding. He was able to stop chemo in February 2016. He just turned 20 last week. And he still remains negative. I got a text from the mom saying he's negative, he turned 20, we're having big celebrations. So that's a great story. But at the same time, not everybody is going to respond. And I think we got lucky, but I also think that because he was still on that low dose gemcitabine, there was some synergy there that allowed for these positive results. And then this is a little girl, I'll just tell you, this is my last slide. Who had what's called Wilms tumor. This is a kidney tumor. It's a pediatric type tumor. She had the tumor removed and she went through chemotherapy, and then a few months later her cancer relapsed all over her lungs, and we started chemo and cannabis. Her mom is a person who does not really believe in a lot of medicine, especially, she said, I allowed them to give my kid chemo and it came back. So she did a lot of other holistic things, bone broth and a ketogenic diet and some other things. But she became cancer-free, and she was actually able to stop chemotherapy early because it was a really toxic chemo. And since all the cancer was gone so early, they felt that they could actually stop. And she also remains cancer-free. Both of these kids, by the way, still continue to take cannabis. They're both in school. They both have no developmental delays. In fact, the only problems AJ has is from the surgery and the chemo that he got for so many years. So she started kindergarten and she's just doing great. And then my last slide is I was asked to just talk about what other conditions, and as you can see, there's so many. How is it possible that there's so many conditions that can be benefited by cannabis? And if you think about the cannabinoid receptor and the endocannabinoid system, think about where it is. Dedi showed the slide, it's all over your body. This is why this must be taught in medical schools. This is why doctors have to learn about this, because this may be root cause. Apart from cancer, this may be root cause, irritable bowel, migraines, fibromyalgia, autism, epilepsy, and there's no reason that here in the United States we should be ignoring this. Thank you.
Bravo, amazing work. Oh my God. I'd like to now invite Caramilla to come up and to converse with these guys. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk to two people who are working on something that I think many of us know very little about, and that really may change medicine going forward. So, Dedi, let me ask you the first question. You talked about mice models. You showed the tumor in mice. Give me a sense, as far as you can tell, of what's the timeline? You know, what might the timeline be for getting this sort of, getting what works in terms of substances and cannabis into treating people?
So it's a difficult question. Usually in this type of noise, usually in this type of research, it's years on years, like it's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years if you're lucky. We're talking about in a different area, which the patient is already getting the medicines. So usually the medicines that scientists find is falling on toxicity, which we know that they are not. So we had a very good results in leukemia. And I came to the head of the hematology department in Rambam Hospital, the biggest hospital near my university. And I spoke with him for 2 hours, and I showed him all the results, and I told him that I want to get blood samples from the patient that he have with this mutation in order to treat the blood, because it's leukemia. You can take blood samples, treat the blood samples immediately, and to see how it's affect.
Right.
It's like the closest to clinical trial. He looked at me and said to me, but why to do it that way? My patient's already taking cannabis. Just tell me what strain, I will give them. It doesn't matter for me. So we're in a weird area, which actually I have the ability in Israel to treat the patient already if I want to. And in what I showed you just now with autism, we did it. We did it with epilepsy. We find that one strain worked much better on the mice. I gave a call to the head of the 4 biggest hospital, the neuropediatrician, the head of the neuropediatrician department in the 4 hospitals. We had a coffee, I know them, we're friends, we're sitting, I showed them the results, and day after that, the kids started to get these strains. So we're
you've already administered this to kids
so,
in
so
hospitals.
it's, I'm not a physician and I'm not administrator it, it's not clinical trials, but these kids are getting cannabis, and except me,
Okay.
all call it cannabis. On the prescription, in Israel, it's written cannabis, and the amount, 30-gram cannabis. Nobody cares if it's called Scooby-Doo or Mickey Mouse. These are real names, okay? So if I have the ability to come to the physician and say, hey, look, I think Scooby-Doo is working much better because this is the pathway in the mice. They block the receptors here. It's blocking this calcium. I said, okay, I will give, I don't care what he's getting. And on the bottle, it's written the same. So we are in the weird area from the real road, the real path. We're talking about few years.
Okay.
In practice, we're doing it every day.
So it sounds like you're taking a shortcut. So it's possible, right? A little bit of a shortcut from the normal way the trials are done.
Right. So first of all, in Israel, the shortcut is in the system.
Okay.
So I'm, I don't like to say it usually, but I have a license to kill. I have a license in Israel to do almost whatever I want in cannabis, okay? And so so it's the opposite from the state. I know the Minister of Health. I've been sitting with him in the committee. I have his phone, like things are going very fast. If I will find something in my lab that I think it's very important, I can take it directly to clinical trials, I guess, in 3-4 days, and in few months to have the results and to get it to the patient. So it can be very, very fast. I'm very, very careful about that. I'm not a physician. I don't know the complexity and the mixture between other things, and I'm very, very, very concerned about me crossing the line. I'm trying to be okay. This is the result. Hey, Bonni, look, this is the result. You had 7 tough years in college learning, medicines in medicine school. Take it and do whatever you think with the patient. I think it must be the physician call in the end. I can give the results. But answering your first question, the conservative road is long. I think in that field we have a shortcut that can be very fast in the important result.
So let me ask you a related question. As you kind of mentioned and alluded to, we have, in this country at least, a kind of divide between some states, at least, let's say Colorado, and the federal government, where especially in the last couple of years, Attorney General Sessions had said, I really am at odds with the kinds of decisions that the states are making. So I guess my question to you is stuff that's happening in other countries, is that of help to you in trying to figure out, okay, how do I administer doses to whom, what strains, or do you feel like the legal hindrances here are still epic?
I think it's both.
Okay.
So there's no question that Dedi's research is helping us. If we know that, let's say, pure CBD actually makes kids worse. I have people that come in all the time and say, I don't want any THC in my child's medicine. Right. What they're missing is that we're not giving them THC. It's going to, remember, we're undoing a lot of the brainwashing that all of us went through. This is bad for you. It's going to make you, brain damaged and so on. Remember the fried egg? This is your egg on your brain on drugs. I mean, that's, think about that message. I mean, we have to undo that. Dedi and I are trying to undo commercials that we all witnessed for years and years and years. But I think that his research is helping in that, let's say for cancer, I don't have the ability, like he has, to look at the full fingerprint of the strain. But if we know that some THCA and CBDA, 2 of the compounds that are in cannabis that are in the raw plant, maybe mixed with some THCA and some other terpene is what they're seeing, then what I do is I start combining different products to say, well, at least if I can get this product in and this product in and another product in, then a patient's taking 3 different things, we may hit on the proper combination. It's not perfect science by any means. And it's terrible that that's how I have to practice medicine, but at the same time, that's where we are in the United States.
And it sounds like the U.S. will lag in some ways in terms of making the breakthroughs if laws are more relaxed in other places.
We are right now, as Lisa mentioned at the beginning of the program, cannabis is a Schedule I. All compounds in cannabis, even the CBD that you can now go buy in a natural food store, is still considered a Schedule I drug, which means it has no medicinal value. Is that true? No. It has high addiction potential. Is that true? No. And it has high abuse potential, and it lacks safety. We know none of that is true. So we are living under these, ridiculous impositions. I mean, I will tell you that I think alcohol and tobacco fit those categories, right? But but cannabis doesn't. And so we are, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to take 10 patients and say, I want to give these 10 patients this same strain to see what happens. I am not allowed to do that in the United States. So when I get approached all the time to do research, but I'm not allowed to. I'm a licensed physician, and I'm not allowed to do that. So until we get it off the Schedule I, we are stuck where we are.
This is kind of a question for both of you because I know you both, speak at conferences, speak to physicians. You, Bonni, mentioned when you were in med school, nobody talked about cannabis. I think really there was not, and then it was like your own research that initially took you down the path to where you are now and knowing a lot about it. What do you feel like this does not have to just be in the U.S. because I know you both speak around the world. What is the sort of receptivity of doctors like right now in terms of they see your research, they may see other research, are they interested, open, learning about this in med school now?
So first of all, I think and this is answering your question to Bonni before, we are exactly on the edge that things starting to change. The research that's been done in the last few years, not just by me, by many scientists, is starting to have impact and starting to learn. And I think in the next 2 years, people like Bonni will start to use this data on patients. And this is changing. Physicians learn how to treat by books. They are going, step by step, and this is the way to treat. I'm teaching in the med school, in the medicine school, and I know that's it's a way of thinking. It's totally different from a scientist that's doing the opposites. But physicians want you to tell them what to do in the situation. And if you tell them, look, I don't know, there are many compounds, there are many there, try this. No, this is, I don't want. I prefer something more dangerous, but I know the results, okay? Yeah. And if we don't know the results, they don't like it. When we are improving this ability of knowing the results and knowing the coincidence and knowing the safety, then the physicians are much more open. When I show my results, usually when I have a meeting in hospitals with physicians, and I have it at least once a week. I'm going to the department, I have all the physicians sitting there. Always the first joke is, did you brought samples? Everybody's very funny. and then we keep talking, and then there is the moment that I feel that I have them. So this always the moment in the data that they see that, okay, in this accuracy, in this data, I'm willing to go with you. Yeah. I'm willing to do this with you. I'm willing to take the chance. In Israel, at least, it totally changed. I think in the state, it's still a little bit behind with the physician. I think because of the recreational side of that many countries have also recreational and medicine. Is it a medicine? Is it fun? Right. How a medicine can be fun, right? Like, it's a problem. But morphium...
Well, also that's what all the debates are about, right? The debates are so much centered around the recreational aspect of it.
So in Israel, in Germany, in Australia, in many countries, they don't have it. If they go just on the medical route. In the state, it's a little bit behind, but looking from a side on the state, they're always not involved, won't involve, and then conquered, Iraq, whatever. So it will be the same.
Okay.
They will be not involved, and then Stanford, Harvard, MIT will all take over, and then I'm done. But
okay. Bonni, what do you find? I mean, you are a physician yourself, but what do you find amongst your colleagues?
So, what I'll first say is all my physician colleagues thought I was crazy when I first started doing this. Of course, they're all interested now. So I've been doing this for 10 years. And it's been an interesting 10 years in that I really was a pariah at the beginning of this. And now I have doctors coming to shadow me because they want to learn, they want to hear about it. And Dedi's perfectly right. Many of them say, well, what's the dose for migraine? Well, like, for whose migraine? And what is the person comfortable with a little bit of THC, or they're not comfortable? Which one do they respond to? I'm a very, detailed, controlled, I'm a Virgo, if anybody knows Virgos. It's impossible. I mean, you just don't want to live like a Virgo. But I had to kind of give that up in order to be a good cannabis doctor. There has to be freedom to try. This is not a pharmaceutical. This is a plant with hundreds and hundreds of compounds. And, you know, there's a famous story of Dr. Meshulam, who's from Israel back in the 1960s when he was doing research on cannabis. He's the one who discovered THC as the intoxicating compound. He named it. He went on to be critical in finding the cannabinoid receptor and then finding the endocannabinoids. His research, he's an amazing man. And there's a story, and correct me if I'm wrong, where he had everybody over to his house and he gave them all cannabis just to see how people react differently. And one guy is giggling and one guy doesn't feel it and one guy's hiding behind the couch and one guy's in the kitchen eating everything. People respond differently. And so what I tell people is, whose brain are you putting it into? Right? We all know people who had a certain kind of cancer and survived, and somebody else that had that same cancer and died maybe got the same treatment. It is as simple as understanding that. We are different in every way that we respond to things, that we metabolize, absorb, and respond. So, you know, a lot of times people look at me like I'm crazy because there are some kids in California who cannot afford high doses of the high CBD, low THC. And these are teenagers. They weigh 200 pounds. I mean, I have a family that has 2 full-time bodyguards in their house to protect the mom from the teenage boy because he's so violent. And what worked for him is THC. Why? Well, it turns out that, as I mentioned, the study from Stanford, likely his brain doesn't make enough cannabis. His brain is always moving forward with no feedback to say, dial it down. And so he takes some THC and the mom says, we sit and have dinner. And he's fine. He's not intoxicated. He actually sits there and enjoys dinner. He's pleasant to be around. Why do we judge that? Why would we judge that? It's just chemistry. It's nothing to be afraid of. So we have to undo a lot of that brainwashing in doctors. And I want to say one thing. Doctors are still taught that cannabis is a drug of abuse. Now, it can be abused, but so can a lot of other drugs that we prescribe, as evidenced by our opioid epidemic. So I think we have to stop looking at the drug being bad, and what we have to focus on is education, including my colleagues, the physicians, so that they can understand this. And they can understand that even if somebody overdoses on cannabis, nothing bad is going to happen. And again, going back to toxicity, it's extraordinarily safe. And I feel very comfortable that I've not harmed anybody with cannabis. And if somebody calls me and says, oh, I took too much and I got really paranoid and it goes away and they're fine the next day and there's no damage. They're not in the lab having to get blood work to make sure that we didn't do something to their liver or their kidneys.
One final quick question that I want both of you to take a crack at. I feel like we could easily go on another half hour, but it's this. If we all met back here in 10 years, can you give me a sense of where you think, of course, this is a guess, but where do you think the science is going to be? Do you think this is going to be in more mainstream use? I mean, you put up, I think as like the last slide, all these things, epilepsy, yeah, all the, autism was discussed, obviously cancer, but this huge range. I don't know who wants to take that first, but like, where do you think if we were to meet back here in 10 years?
I'm going to give a very simple answer. I think I would like, if I could have my way, someone walks in, we've got their genetics of their condition, of their endocannabinoid system. Basically, you have your profile, and I'm able to look at cannabis and see a starting place to match which cannabinoids might match what condition. And of course, 10 years from now, I think that that's doable because we are kind of on the cutting edge of that, I think, right now.
So first of all, I think nobody will enter, nobody will meet. Everything is through the iPhones and these kind of things. But
you came here from Israel, and we've got iPhones, so.
So, second, I think this field is just in the beginning, and I give this example. I think it's a bubble. I'm sorry to be, always I'm the bad guy. It's a bubble, and I think 30% of what people are saying about this plant is true, but 30% is huge, okay? And this is a revolution in medicine. It won't be stayed like a plant that you smoke and you tincture 3 drops. It will be medicine, maybe as a plant, maybe as an oil, but much more accurate. We will learn how to give it. We'll learn which indication. And I think part of the indication are not really true. Part of them we will discover a new indication that it can fit. There will be people that it will fit to them, people that not fit to them. And I think we will treat it more accurately. There is two sides of this plant. One is the recreational side that have a revolution. It can maybe will be like alcohol, when you can use it, drive or not drive, whatever. That and for the medicine side, there is no doubt that you can't take the wheel back. You can't take a autistic kid that never speak, was very violent, was hospitalized for years. Now he's back home, speaking few words. The whole family is changed, and now take it from him. You can't do it. People will burn the hospital. Okay, so we need to understand it, that if a child, they have 200 seizures a day, and I know this child, okay, that have 5 years old with 200 seizures a day. It's like crazy, right? The body, 200 seizures a day. Tried all the medicines that we have to give him. Nothing helped him. Getting cannabis and he's seizure free. There is no way to take it from him. So it's here to stay. And we need to learn how to use it better, how to treat our patient better. And I think by time it will go better and better and better and better. And I think all the medicine is going to personal medicine, understanding that people are different and we have a different genetic, different mutation, different varieties, and it's all going to there. It's not just the cannabis, and the cannabis will go there too, I believe. And I think it will be a shelf medicine for many, many, many illnesses. You know, when I was out of the army 20 years ago, half of my friends opened a startup for computer scientists, you know. That was the bubble of the computers and the internet. They all grabbed $3 million from America, have 3 good years traveling in India and something like that, and this company was closed. So this was the bubble of the internet and the computers. We all remember it if you're around, 40 or something like that. So that was a totally bubble, but we can't say that internet and computers are not right, okay? Right. If something is bubble and there is a lot of noise about it, it's not saying that the core is not real. And that's what I think cannabis is today. It's the internet and computers that were 20 years ago. It will develop to a place that it will be part of our life, but very different what we see today, okay?
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like I've learned so much. I hope you did too. Dedi, Bonni, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Dr. Goldstein flew in from California for this. Dedi came from Israel for this. Kara came across the river for this. Please give them a warm hand. Really amazing evening, and congratulations to both of you for amazing work, and much thanks from all of us. Thank you so much for coming out, and we hope to see you again.